All right, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Retro Game Club podcast. You might also call it Episode 33. This is Hugh, and joining me is the new coach of the Cleveland Browns, Rob.
I don't know what sports are, so I'll assume something happened to that guy.
Yes. Well, they change coaches every year. I actually don't know if they fired their head coach this year yet.
Oh,
It's a safe bet, though.
So our listeners know we never plan our intros, so I didn't know if you were going to do like a Y2K20 bug joke or where it was going to go.
No. Are there Y2K? Is that a thing?
No.
Okay. Good.
No. We have 12 years for another bug, I think.
Right, the Unix epic time bug.
Yes.
Which they just now, that is, I'm sorry to get off topic, but they have started incorporating fixes for that in Linux just this year.
Yeah.
So for people who aren't familiar with this and want to be off topic for a second, this has to do with the way that Unix and Linux keep track of time. They basically count number of milliseconds since
1970?
January 1st, 1980?
1970.
1970, okay. And the data type they use is 32-bit int, and they're going to run out of milliseconds in the year 2038. And it's the same type of problem as the Y2K problem, but not as well publicized. And I guess we have a lot of time to prepare for it, so it's probably not going to be a problem.
And there's actually a similar bug in, I think it's Airbus jets, where if they don't reboot the jet, the whole airplane, every like 40 days or something, it'll just turn off, even if you're in mid-flight.
Yeah, I read about that. That was in the news last year. And it's the same thing. It's an integer overflow problem. So,
Reboot.
Bad times, man. They need some assembler developers working for the airlines, man. I think it's the problem is they don't have developers who have worked in assembler, and now you get integer overflow. All right, so what have you been up to during our holiday recess?
Yeah, so it was very not relaxing. You know, when you have a 1-year-old and an almost 4-year-old, and you have a bunch of projects starting and ending at work all at the same time, even time off really isn't relaxing. But yeah, so I've been working on my programming project a lot, which will be a topic of the week. I'm very excited. I got it across a big finish line last night. I have been playing with Google Stadia. It's been working fine with me. In fact, it's been working great. I've been testing it out with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I was going to jump ship on that game because for me it was a bunch of who cares, like running around doing tasks that I don't really care about with. I mean, it's an okay game, it's a, no pun intended, epic game, but I don't know, I just didn't care, and I met up with a buddy 2 days ago who said, you know what, you're almost to the point where the story gets great, so I think I'm going to keep going with that one. And yeah, I had one of those Christmases where if I was a kid, it'd be like the best day ever. You know, my whole extended family had a stick to Amazon wish list rule this year, and it worked out great since mine was all Switch games. So I just got piles of Switch games that a lot of them are retro, so those will help with Game Club games. And yeah, and then playing our Game Club games. So that's been about it for me. How about you?
Let's see. I got a couple notes here of what's been going on. So I'm really excited. The Ys 4 remake is now being brought to America, or at least will be this year. So I'm pretty psyched about that. This is probably my favorite game in the series. So this was a Vita game that was a remake of Ys 4. It's like kind of like half sequel, half remake, and it was last year or 2 years ago now, remade for PlayStation 4. But being a Falcom game, there's a minimum 2 years before you get it in the U.S. And yeah, so it's going to be. They haven't announced the pre-sale info on it yet, but it looks like it'll have regular version and fancy box version.
So I played this one before I played Ys 4, and I love both games. They're so different that if you haven't played Ys 4 yet and you played this game, just play both. You won't, you know what I mean? Just play both. Yeah,
you don't need to have played through Ys 4 to understand the story, because it kind of explains the story along the way, so you really won't get stuck or anything. But yeah, it's a great game, and I'm really psyched. I think it's coming out around the same time as like the Final Fantasy VII remake, so it's gonna be a very, very busy spring where I'm just gonna have to space out games a lot next year. I posted an article on my site about games of the 2010s from a perspective of someone who doesn't play most modern games. It's excessively long. We'll probably put a link to it in the show notes if you want to go read it, but it's way longer than it needs to be, and mostly talks about oddball games from the 2010s. And then also some retro games that I played over the decade. And then I have some sort of problem where I keep buying remakes of Night Trap.
What's the latest?
So just this morning, so already I have the 3DO version of Night Trap. I have the PlayStation Vita version of Night Trap. I don't know why no one needs that game. And then on one of these crazy Switch sales, the Switch version of Night Trap was like $4.99. So I bought that. And then just this morning that we're recording, Limited Run Games is doing their annual January 1st blowout sale. So like when they sell a game, they basically print like 10% more than what they sell to cover any defective copies they have to exchange. And then January 1st, they sell, these extra copies for, some number of dollars off. The risk being, of course, is that if one of those happens to be the defective copy, there's no way to exchange it.
Yeah, you just get a refund. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. I don't know. But one of the games on that was the PlayStation 4 version of Night Trap in the 32X box.
Yep.
Which, it's not the 32X version of Night Trap. It's the PlayStation 4. I don't know why I bought this, other than it's a version I don't have. And, like, Night Trap is just such, like, it's such, like, a 90s icon that I feel like I have to own every copy of it.
Yeah, I got that one when it first came out on Limited Run. And, but I already had it somehow digitally for PS4. So I have it unboxed for some reason. Because I guess I don't like shelf space. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll see. I'll install it, see if my kids find the game interesting. I'm sure they will be unimpressed.
Yeah, because it's funny because back in the 90s, no parent would ever give their kid Night Trap.
I would have. It's not even close to R-rated. I mean,
and you're the good guy.
You're saving the good guy, right? And then what is perceived as being like violent in the game? Again, like commercials for horror movies are worse than what's in Night Trap.
Yes,
it's not even close. So I never I mean, again, it was someone in Congress. I think it was Joseph Lieberman. So was given like a clip of a game in some an out of context clip from the game. And then someone who was like strongly anti-video game, described the scene to him in a way that was inaccurate. And because I'm sure Joseph Lieberman doesn't know how to play a Sega CD.
Yes.
Or, for that matter, knows that the Sega CD is a thing. He did not then, follow up and be like, well, let me try this game and see if this actually is bad or if I'm just being fed a bunch of stuff by an activist.
Yeah.
So anyhow, Night Trap.
Well, if any listener hasn't read or listened to the audiobook of Service Games or Console Wars, there's at least one chapter in each dedicated to that, and it's very, very, very interesting, very entertaining, and kind of enraging that it was all for nothing.
Yes. By far the dumbest controversy in the history of gaming. All right, so we got a bunch of news. Usually December is pretty quiet, but I guess a lot happened. There's MAME 0217, which sounds like a minor release, but you say this is actually a big release.
Yes. So one big deal about this MAME update is that they perfected, I'm using air quotes here, the Sega Model 1 coprocessor, which is used in Star Wars Atari, which is not the 1984 one. This is like the Atari trilogy, I'm pretty sure. Sorry, Star Wars Arcade, yes. Which is not the 1984, it's the trilogy one. Kind of the rail shooter. Very good game, but you could never really emulate it. And so now you can almost perfectly. And they put a lot of work into the Virtua Fighter series, and that is working almost flawless. So if you're a fan of any of those games, this is a huge update for you. And I'm a fan of those games, so it is a huge update for me.
So the Star Wars arcade trilogy, that came out in the late 90s, and it's still a staple of like Dave and Buster's type of places. I mean, you can still find this game all over the place because it apparently, I mean, I look at it now, it's aged really, really well. So, yeah, very exciting that I guess you can emulate it now.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those games that it didn't have a big polygon count, but for some reason it's just really smooth. And it's a pretty snappy game. It plays pretty well. Some parts better than others. You know, I'm not sure people are a big fan of the Darth Vader part where you have to fight him with the lightsaber.
Yeah. Yeah, that part's a little bit clunky, but I don't know how many people make it that far.
Exactly, yeah. But if you have it on MAME, then you could practice before you go to Dave & Buster's and get your high scores there.
Yeah.
And some more emulation news. After how many years of this? Many years, like 9 years.
9 years. Yeah.
Wii 7800 emulator, obviously the emulator on the Wii for the 7800 has been updated. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's been essentially an atrophied emulator. I don't know how many people are like dying to play 7800 on the Wii. I kind of am. I like the 7800 a lot. But yeah, just big update, and I guess if you want to try it, here you go.
And the Wii is a great system to emulate on too. They're cheap. They're pretty easy to get going. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, what do we got next?
That's a good question. Mega Man 2, port to the Intellivision. All right, so we've talked about other games by this developer. I pasted this so long ago in the notes, I forgot what it was. So we've talked about a couple other things that this developer is working on. Developer's name is Matthew Keel, and he also is working on that Castlevania remake for Intellivision we talked about. And this is a remake of Mega Man 2 for Intellivision. Looks really advanced.
Does this also require the add-on that Castlevania required? I'm not seeing that in here.
I don't see a note that says you need it yet.
Because this is really impressive. All the vertical and side scrolling and everything going on the screen. I mean, it's pretty close to the NES version.
Yeah, pretty close. You could almost buy that this is an early NES game.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this guy would be a great interview, huh?
Yeah, we got to figure out how to contact him, see if he wants to hop on the show sometime.
And more Mega Man 2 news. Researchers want to use Mega Man 2 to evaluate AI. So the title's a bit deceiving. They use Mega Man 2 and 55 Atari 2600 games to test a broad range of AI techniques. So really what this is they try to get Mega Man to defeat all the bosses in the game. And to see how fast each different kind of AI can figure that out. And they're doing that so they could see how AI could be used in the real world for similar tasks. So really interesting.
Defeating bosses, so it's the similar task of fighting
robots.
Mega Man bosses in real life. Okay.
Yeah. See, the irony is this AI will probably become a Mega Man boss in real life. So, these people are way smarter than me and probably creating Skynet. Let's see. The man who made the worst video game in history. Now, this is on thehustle.co, which I don't know this site at all, but it's the story about the making of E.T., obviously, on 2600 by Howard Scott Warshaw. And really, I'm glad they mentioned this part that no one ever really mentions, is that games back then were one or two developers, and they got, 6 to 8 months to make them. He had 3 to 6 weeks to come up with a concept beginning to end. So for the time he got, it's not a bad game.
Yeah, and also, like, there's a bunch of, I mean, they mentioned this in the article, too, that E.T. is not, and I say this all the time, E.T. is by far not the cause of, the video game market crash in 1983. It's just people like to put a face on something. You want to label something as this is the thing that caused it, and that's almost never the case. So I've been to a panel with Howard Scott Warshaw during the time that the E.T. landfill thing was going on. It was like a screening of the E.T. landfill movie, and he did a Q&A and stuff. Really great guy. And he talked about the whole, I mean, he created some of the best games on the 2600.
Absolutely, yeah. Yar's Revenge and handful of others.
So the downside to that is then he got a reputation as being like a rock star Atari developer. So when they had this completely unreasonable request, he's the one they turned to. No one under those conditions could have done anything better. And ET is not even in the 20 worst Atari 2600 games.
No. And
I mean,
it's really,
if you played like Bachelor Party, like there's some really wretched stuff in the 2600
or that first Star Wars game where it's just two lightsabers going back and forth, not doing anything.
Oh, was that the?
I think that's the first.
Was that Jedi Arena?
Yes, I think that's what it is.
Was that the first? I thought that was.
I thought
that came out later.
I mean, that could be a total lie. It just feels like the first.
Oh, see, I feel like it was because I thought that was a tie-in to Return of the Jedi.
It absolutely
in which case it couldn't have come out before 83. I could be wrong, though. We need to get Ferg or someone on the show to help us clarify this. Yeah. Like, I'm not an expert there. All right. But yeah, it's a good article, and I think actually it's kind of like a fair recap of the situation. PlayStation sound designer on creating the iconic startup sound. Yeah,
this is a really, really quick interview on siliconera.com. I don't think we've ever been to this site before, but he just talks about his limitations, about how to create it, and kind of the steps he took to make it. And it seemed like it went pretty quickly. I wouldn't say this is the best article that's ever been on this show, but if you like PlayStation and you literally have 2 minutes, it's literally it's a 5-question interview, and he answers each one with pretty quick paragraphs. So, yeah, not much more to say about that one.
You wanted to complain about this article about the PlayStation 3 CPU?
Yes, and since I put this in the show notes, I could be wrong. So this is on tweaktown.com, which I, again, never been to this site before. It's titled Guerrilla Dev, PS3 cell CPU is by far stronger than a new Intel CPU. So this actually links to a longer interview on Game Informer. But so I did 3 seconds of research on this. I was about to complain about how wrong this was. However, on Wikipedia, an infallible website that never has errors, right? It says the PlayStation Cell CPU achieves a theoretical maximum of 230 gigaflops. And then it goes on to say on the PS4 CPU section that has a theoretical performance of 102 gigaflops. So I guess this could be right, but is theoretical even close to what it would actually get?
Well, this is the problem when you go down the rabbit hole of trying to compare arbitrary numbers, right? Like, to be kind of blunt, I don't think those numbers mean anything. Because there's more, like, if you're going to measure overall CPU performance, certain CPUs perform better at certain tasks, depending on the architecture. So you can't really say, like, this CPU is 100%. Obviously, it's one generation over another, right? So you can say, oh, of course, the 386 is a more powerful CPU than the 286. They're the same CPU, different generations. So there it's, more like an apples to apples comparison. And comparing like different hardware architecture entirely, it's a little bit harder to make a clean, call about one being more powerful than the other. Because again, like I have no doubt the cell processor probably does some things way better than modern CPUs. But for running Windows 10 in Steam, maybe modern CPUs are better.
Yeah. And also, there's memory speed, there's the amount of cache. It goes on and on. So yeah,
I don't think I'm not going to argue with this person's statement, because I believe they're probably right in some specific way.
I was, in full disclosure, I was ready to dump all over this article, and I'm glad I did the very quick research I did, so I didn't put my foot in my mouth. So yeah, what you said.
Yes. Remembering when one company ruined Christmas for some NES owners. So this is a Nintendo Life article. I feel like they repost this every December because this sounds very familiar. But this is about the Homework First accessory for the NES, which is essentially the club. You remember the club for your car? Back when everyone was really worried about their car being stolen. Something even though my car now costs substantially more than the car I had in the 90s, I worry much less about it being stolen. I don't know why. Like, is that a thing that's on your mind at all?
No, because I have insurance. I want my car to get stolen. It's 10 years old. Yeah. I could use a new one.
Yeah, I did have a car that I used to park. Like, we had a tree in our parking lot that didn't look like it was all that healthy, and I did used to park my car next to that tree every day. The last car that I had, because I was really hoping work would take care of that one for me. So this is a product produced by Master Lock that basically works like the club. Like, you can't get your games. It has a 4-digit code that I'm sure your kid will figure out in 7 minutes or less.
Yeah, they only sold 25,000 units. It was $16, and it makes it so you can't get your Nintendo cartridges into your original NES. And this is an evil product, but also, you know what you could just do instead? Take away the controllers.
Right, or just establish some sort of authority with your children.
Yes,
where they will actually,
listen.
You can work out some sort of compromise with them. So yeah, I would like to see a teardown on one of these because I bet you these are incredibly simple to crack.
Yeah. It's a money grab.
Yeah. I would, this thing goes for, I don't know what it actually goes for, but someone is asking $140 for it on eBay right now.
Wow.
But they have some, high-res pictures, and, like, my parents wouldn't have bought this because they really weren't, what's the word I'm looking for, engaged. So I think it would have taken, 12-year-old me about 4 minutes to break this thing. This doesn't look particularly sturdy.
And you would have spent your time thinking about how to get past that than doing your homework. It's a challenge.
Yeah. So somebody else has one. So one person is asking $140, whereas Chevy Man 96 is asking $1.04 with 2 bids. Well, I am going to go ahead and bid. Wait, what's shipping? Free shipping. I will bid $6 on this right now. Hold on.
Oh, I hope you win this.
Confirm. $6 plus. Oh, I've been outbid by someone else's max bid. All right, I'm going to go up to 8. Oh, I've been outbid again. Someone is bidding more than $8. So the current, because of me spiking the price, it is now going for $8.50.
Please, I hope that's one of our listeners. Because And I wonder if the person bidding against you is a naive parent who thinks that this will work on an NES Classic Mini.
No, I 100%. I'm willing to bet, however much I bid on this, that the person bidding on it right now is the person trying to sell it for $140.
Yes, you're right. And their top bid is $130.
Yeah, and they're essentially trying to make sure someone else doesn't sell that someone doesn't set a lower price for this. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you can't look on eBay who the bidders are, can you?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm going to see this person's other items, though, because I don't know if they have any other crazy... They do not. Okay, we better get back on topic here. Laptop like it's 1979 with a 16-core Z80 on FPGA.
Yeah.
That seems like a good use of a 16-core.
So this is Hackaday, and yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. Listeners, please look at this thing. I love this. So it's a laptop with 16 Z80 CPUs in it that has, it's running an FPGA, but it's running a weird version of CPM, the pre-MS-DOS operating system, with a file server called cp/net, which I never heard of before. But, it has an 18 by 25 inch character screen, it has an 80 by 25 character screen, so it looks like a terminal. And yeah, I think this thing's beautiful. And I don't know why this person built this, but I'm glad he did.
Yes.
And then we have another Hackaday, the BOXY all-in-one Nintendo 64, your 90s self always wanted. So this is a Compaq CRT, not Compact, but Compaq, the brand. And they put... Somehow the bottom had enough open space inside that they could fit an entire Nintendo 64 motherboard in there. And you just plug your controllers into the front of it. It's pretty slick.
Yeah, so you say it has space for 4 controllers and 3 games. We go to the full project page here.
Three games.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to look at the internals of this.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's got a switcher or something. But yeah, this is like the kind of thing you would see in some doctor's offices, waiting room. Like you have kids, but you didn't have kids when Nintendo 64 was still just barely a system. Mm-hmm. So like when my oldest kid was really young, we would go to a pediatrician, and in the pediatrician's office was a thing that looked remarkably like this, that had Mario Kart or something on it. None of the controllers worked. It was really old.
This was... What exactly was that at your doctor's office?
It was a monitor that had a Nintendo 64 built in, and I think Mario Kart was the game on it. Mm-hmm. And then like 4 controllers sticking out. So it was essentially, imagine a monitor with like 4 Nintendo 64 controllers sticking out of it, and then, as far as I could tell, locked down Mario Kart.
So if you look at all the picture galleries of this, it's at the top of it. And they built some boxes, and it's just sitting in there. So this is a very kind of janky, easy project. But when it's put together, it looks really nice.
Yeah, it looks nice. Yeah, I'm looking at the extended gallery here. You have like a...
The hardest part is it looks like soldering the controller connections. Because those are the only things it looks like you really have to extend. Good on this guy.
All right, and a few more news sections here. We have a unplanned section about Atari computing. So Atari Home Computer turns 40. So happy birthday, Atari Computer.
And that happened like right after our last episode. So kind of dated.
And from AtariProjects.org, who you might be hearing more from on this podcast fairly soon. Compile and run an assembly language program for the Atari computer. 15 to 30 minute project. It's a tutorial on just how to do a very basic assembly program and run it.
Yeah, this is a great jumping off point for anyone looking to get into assembly. And it's really straightforward.
Yeah, I would actually say eBay's another good place. You can go on eBay and pick up like old programming books. Sometimes to pay. Really, I found it's really weird. Like some things that are more like NES specific, like 6502 programming books, tend to go for like a lot more than 68,000 programming books.
I keep hearing over and over again that Assembly Lines is the 6502 assembly book you need if you wanna get in and get good fast. But I have never read it.
So then we have an unplanned section on legal news. Whoever currently owns the copyright to Choose Your Own Adventure has issued takedowns for a number of indie itch.io games that describe themselves as Choose Your Own Adventure games.
Yeah, I mean, again, possibly they have to do this. But, just like Nintendo has to sue people or they can't sue them in the future if it gets out of control,
Right.
And yeah, it's
not just games using a title, it's games that use Choose Your Own Adventure in the description of the game, too.
Now, remember, I'm pretty sure they also... Yeah, exactly. So you can't even have that as a genre, I guess. But they also sued Netflix over Bandersnatch.
Oh, great. Well, that's just chasing money at that point.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Bandersnatch describes itself as a Choose Your Own Adventure. I think they would call it... They probably are very, like... If you use the term, like, interactive fiction or something, then you won't run into this problem.
Yeah, which was what all FMV called themselves, too, so... I mean, really, would you consider Bandersnatch an FMV? I kind of do.
Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and call it that. It isn't fundamentally different than some early FMV games where... So a lot of the FMV games like that, there was really not any interaction with the FMV, right? Like it'd be a scene that maybe contained some information, but the gameplay was done entirely out of there. But there were some games that were like essentially a Choose Your Own Adventure. Non-copyright infringing, choose the thing that happens. Like there'd be a lot of those, but see, going back to Night Trap, like Night Trap uses FMV in a totally different way than like Bandersnatch does.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties if it had FMV through the entire game, but it doesn't.
I don't know what that is.
You've never heard of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties? It's a adult 3DO game.
No, I don't know what that is.
All right, well, you got to go look the Angry Video Game Nerd review of it.
Okay. It's not something I'll search for and get stuff I don't want.
No, it's not. It's called an adult game, but is not really... I think USA Network airs worse stuff.
Okay.
So... I did play it in the 3DO demo unit at the store. Not when there were customers in the store, but we were so morbidly curious that we tried it after work one day and said, well, this is awful. No one's ever going to buy this. And then the other one... So this is a very specific story. Hundreds of knockoff consoles with Nintendo ROMs seized by North Carolina's Anti-Counterfeiting Task Force. I guess North Carolina views this as a bigger problem. I can tell you Illinois doesn't view this as a problem because I still see mall kiosks that sell these, clone Nintendo. Well, basically it's like a Nintendo 64 controller that has a bunch of ROMs built in and really poor emulation. You probably have those in your mall too?
I don't think so, really. But that's exactly what this is. This was mostly in malls, and they got 340 units at $800,000.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all. Where is that math?
I know.
$800,000 for 340 units? That's just so they can trigger, like, some level of felony. That means those units are retailing for $2,352.94 a piece.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's not right. So one of those numbers is wrong. Probably. I'm guessing if I looked at North Carolina law, I would find that 800,000 is the difference between like a level 1 felony and a level 2 felony or something like that.
Yeah, and this part says they voluntarily surrendered 340 units, so maybe there are more. I don't know. This makes no sense.
Yeah, well, anyhow, I'm actually glad to see one of these guys get cracked down on. It's about time.
Oh, if you go into the notes, people are ripping on this article saying, like, there's no way this math is right.
There's no way that math is right. It's not possible.
And that these things cost $7 on Alibaba, so why even... You could just get them shipped, so why even try?
So then we have a little section here on vaporware and unreleased games. So the rumored Akira game for Sega Genesis has been discovered. This was probably a matter of bad timing. I think Akira kind of peaked in popularity around like 95, which is when making a new Genesis game was not a good idea.
This game looks fantastic. There's a 58-minute video in here, and you start off on Kaneda's bike. You're driving to Neo Tokyo, and it looks very super hang-on. But I mean, it's a beautiful game, and you could see him punching and doing stuff, but there's no one around, so it's obviously unfinished.
Yeah, so I think it's a game that graphically looks great, but looks like it probably plays badly. Did you see this first-person scene?
Yeah, this looks very ahead of its time. It looks like you are Tetsuo escaping the mental institution, and you're using your powers.
Yeah, so it's like, and again, it's graphically great. It would take me a long time to produce a game that looked this good. I just don't think it looks like something you'd want to play. Because you're kind of wandering through a lot of empty rooms, and occasionally there's a guard, and then you use your power, and then...
But again, it's an unfinished game.
It's an unfinished game, right. So yeah, it could have been something good. What I'm seeing doesn't look like it would be a lot of fun.
I don't know if I'm going to have time to test this one out. There is a downloadable ROM for it. But yeah, just the... like when you're walking through the sewers, there's also a platformer, side-scrolling platformer part. It just looks fantastic. And then there's almost full motion video parts of it. Really, really impressive graphics, but it's too bad this never got finished.
Yeah, well, maybe someone will disassemble it and finish it. It might go, just looking at the graphics, it could go over the 4 meg cartridge limit, though.
True, yeah.
Another unreleased game, this is out on smspower.org, and it's called Unreleased 3D Gunner. And it's a 3D, it's for the 3D goggles. And looks like kind of a shooter-ish game.
So yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch any video on this one, did you?
No, I downloaded it, and now because we didn't talk for like a few weeks, I can't remember if I played it. I don't think I did play it yet. I see that someone patched it, though. Like, one of the people on the forums here has already done a patched version of it to fix some flashing issue.
I love people.
Yeah.
I love that someone's like, I'm just going to fix this now. Like, it bugged them that much.
And then Shenmue dev confirms the Sega Saturn II briefly existed. They call it the Sega Saturn II Black Belt console. So they're confirming that there was at least a dev kit for Sega Saturn II, which is not the same as Dreamcast. It's different hardware.
Yeah, so if this Sega Saturn II would have won the battle against Dreamcast, it would have been the Dreamcast. This is not something that would have come out before Dreamcast. It was like one or the other.
Right. So like a lot of things, a lot of the reasons, if you read, I think it was Console Wars, really talked about like the internal strife at Sega where they would build competing hardware. So like you had one team building the 32X while another team was building the Saturn.
It was
And
America versus Japan, really.
yeah. And I don't know if this was America versus Japan or not. They described it, said in 1996 Sega teamed up with Lockheed Martin to make a beefier Sega Saturn console. That seems like it would have been an American endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the model that won out.
And in that time, it never gets talked about because it got squashed so early, but the Americans were also working with Silicon Graphics before Nintendo did for almost the exact same specs. And I guess there was a rumored phone call. Well, I guess it's not rumored. It's been talked about in interviews that the head in Japan said, we're not going to use that because the chip is too big. Or, it's like the same size as all other chips. It was just some excuse to shut him up, Yeah, I mean, there was proof that this existed before, but I don't know if there was any documents about a dev kit existing. So pretty neat.
Yeah. Eventually one will show up and, like, you'll be able to take a photo of it at game conferences, and then they'll put it on eBay for $1 million.
Yes.
That's the way this will all go down. And then we're going to close out news with a couple sad items. The inventor of the online bulletin board, Randy Suess, passed away at age 74 just a few days ago.
Yeah, he was a Chicago native, and he created CBBS, which he built and programmed all himself. He's not, when people think of sysops, they think of someone just buying a modem and a computer and installing a BBS program. This guy coded the first one, And if memory serves right, he also, because of him and because of this, the zip compression program became popular or became into existence because phone calls were expensive back in the day, so they needed a way to send stuff over modem quicker, and that's why. So, pretty sad. This guy had a huge impact on computing in general. He should be remembered. So, yeah. And then another big one, Chuck Peddle, the father of the 6502 and the Commodore PET, passed away. We talk about the 6502, I think, every episode.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that was, he was 82. And, yeah, this article that we'll link to links to some other, articles kind of recapping the history of the 6502. They recommend a site called team6502.org. That talks a lot about the team that worked on it and, how they came to design this chip. And it was a cost thing, right? I mean, they were trying to design a chip that could be used in low-cost computers.
That could do, like, here are the basics you need in computing. Let's put it in one chip. And they created MOS to compete directly with Motorola, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really just, again, so you could do stuff like a Commodore 64.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Nintendo and Apple II. And
yeah, everything. Yeah, anything that you could afford in the 80s.
Yeah. And that ends news.
So I want to tease, we're going to have a couple, because this episode is really long in news and stuff. I'm going to tease a couple upcoming topics. So on the next two episodes, we're going to have in the next two episodes, interview with Rebecca Heineman. We've mentioned her work several times on the show, talking about like port. We talked a lot about ports, and obviously we're big fans of multi-platform games. So that should be coming up next episode. Does that sound right?
Yes.
In 2 episodes, we're going to have an interview with Jason Moore, who runs the Atari Projects site that we talk about almost every episode. And there's a lot of technical, like, Atari stuff in there and a lot of stuff about the site, and it's a really good interview. We're just spacing them out a little bit so we have, some content to get through January.
Absolutely, yeah. And we have a few more topics already picked out for the next few episodes as well that are not interviews. We're working on potential very big interviews, but I don't want to talk about those until they're recorded because you never know what's going to happen. In my life, it seems that if I mention something to anyone and it hasn't happened yet, then it usually doesn't happen, and I end up
never happens.
I just look like an idiot at that point.
Right. So we're trying to incorporate a few more interviews. I think we have kind of you and I go about it differently. Like you are looking at bigger names. I'm looking at like people who are doing very niche projects,
which I think is a great balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a niche project, like, hey, I wrote I decided to write an RDI Halcyon emulator for the PSP, right? If that's a project you've done, that's exactly what I want to talk about on the show.
Exactly, yeah. And I also have a few projects, actually, that you and I haven't discussed yet that could be potential topics of the episode. So already, Q1 and Q2 Retro Game Club podcasts, like it's going to be pretty loaded, and we just kind of wanted to start the year with catching up on a lot of news and letting you guys know what's going on.
Oh, so I'm looking at Strain. There's sorry, it's led me down the rabbit hole of systems that don't have emulators. RDI Halcyon does not have an emulator.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like someone has not yet emulated the Action Max, which would be kind of a fun one to see. Have you ever seen the Action Max?
No. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
That typing here is me Googling.
Okay. So, like, yeah. Anyway, if you're working on any kind of weird emulation project, go ahead and contact us. Email at retrogameclub.net.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is
and we
right.
Might even we possibly have a Twitter, too, that you could send a DM to. I don't know how that works.
Yes. So I have to type this in because I always say our name on Twitter incorrectly. But we now have at RGC Podcast. We have a whopping 13 followers right now. Please follow us. Having more followers. One reason why we did this is we found a lot of people aren't on Facebook and don't email. A lot of people are just on Twitter. As you know, by listening to the show, we aren't really social media guys. So thank you for Zach for maintaining this and Facebook now. Giving us a follow helps because it helps get us more better interviews, really. Right now, having 13 followers is not helping us. It'll probably deter from getting better interviews, but that is okay. Yeah. So.
So that's all coming up. Do you want to talk about our Game Club games?
Yeah, I guess since mine's on here first, I'll go first. I chose Wipeout, the tech demo for every system since 1995. And if you don't know what Wipeout is, it's a futuristic hovercraft racing game that is timed. It was in the movie Hackers, at least a version of it. But yeah, this game, I want to start on what I liked, which is the music. You know, I played Wipeout 1, Wipeout 3, and Wipeout XL. And you get music from Chemical Brothers and Orbital and Left Field. And those are some of my favorite 90s electronic musicians. So I really like that part. Like I said, it's really known for being on PlayStation, but it's for MS-DOS, Windows, and Sega Saturn. The first Wipeout game was a bit rough for me. I kept bouncing off the walls, and it really gives you a hard stop when you barely touch a wall, and it's kind of hard to see where that starts. It's a very early game on PlayStation. The graphics and the gameplay just weren't there for me. But Wipeout XL and Wipeout 3 hit it for me a bit better. It's less blurry, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the controls just felt tighter. I do think Wipeout 1 had the best music. And you can play this with the PlayStation Link cable, which I don't think anyone is using in 2020. But yeah, it's made by Psygnosis, who, has made just countless games since the mid 80s. I won't list all of those, but so I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to mention about this game. It really reminds me, out of any game that would be an analog to it, I want to say that Stun Runner is probably the closest, which I actually like better. I hate to say, now I've only played Stun Runner in arcade. I don't know if it has ports or anything, but I'm going to give this a recommend. Definitely Wipeout XL, I would give the highest recommendation to. Yeah, you have anything to say about this game?
Yeah, I mean, kind of same. Like, I like the soundtrack a lot. I have a few different versions of it. I mean, I have like a PlayStation version. I have a PC version, which did not run that well in DOSBox. I probably have to mess with the configuration a little bit. But I kind of had a hard time getting it to run properly. And then I have a couple PSP versions that are literally from Five Below. In fact, your local Five Below. I know Five Below does not sponsor this podcast, although they probably should. But they occasionally get PSP games, or they did at least when the PSP was being cleared out, right? And there were a couple Wipeout games included in there, and those play a lot better. I mean, other than like you have some load time issues, I suppose. Really, it's like a lot, it looks a lot better. Like a lot of things you described are fixed up in there. But those are mostly the ones that I've played. And I agree. The soundtrack is the best part of the game.
What do you think would be your favorite that you've played?
Probably it's going to be the one called Wipeout Pure, which is PSP. This is a PSP one. It's one of the two PSP ones. Only because, like I said, it just kind of plays better. It's on. It still sort of doesn't look much better than a PlayStation game, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think they really improved the graphics a whole lot over time. Not they necessarily need to, but the controls and the number of courses and stuff are a little bit better.
Yeah, I should say one thing I didn't mention is there is kind of a RC Pro-Am feel to this as well. The weapons felt like RC Pro-Am to me, which is not a good thing. I don't think I ever hit anyone with a weapon.
Yeah.
And when you're hit with a weapon, it's kind of out of nowhere. But Wikipedia does list the series as Wipeout, Wipeout 2097, Wipeout 64, Wipeout 3, Fusion, Pure, Pulse, HD, 2048. And then there's a PlayStation collection called the Omega Collection, which came out in 2017.
Wow. Okay, so I haven't even heard of that. That sounds like it would be fun, though.
Yeah,
assuming they can continue to use licensed music and they didn't have to replace it or something.
That's a good question. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. I do give it a recommend. I'm sure if you're listening to the show, you've probably played Wipeout at least once.
What did I play? Oh yeah, so over Christmas break here, I played through Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Played through it on the Switch because I figured I paid for the Nintendo subscription. I might as well use it. And wanted to do kind of an adventure-y game more than an action game, but of course, Link to the Past is kind of more of an action game than an adventure game. I know there's exploring and stuff, but it's one of the more linear Zelda games, I guess. So overall, like I'm a big fan of the Zelda series. Everyone knows that. I have not played through Link to the Past though, really since the 90s. I played through it once or twice in the 90s, and then really haven't gone back to it. I played A Link Between Worlds, which is a very, very similar game. And yeah, it's a little more difficult than I remember it being. Like when I was playing through, I was kind of surprised how few like heart drops there are. Like you defeat an enemy and you get a heart. Not very many. So you end up like, okay, I better go find all 4 potion bottles and buy a lot of potions. Now, luckily the game is very, very generous with money. I never had any problem like filling up all potions or buying any items. Like it seems like I had an unlimited amount of money through the entire game. So that part's good. And the dungeons, it was a nice, after just playing Link's Awakening, I kind of appreciated the dungeons in Link to the Past more because they're much more straightforward than the Link's Awakening dungeons, which can be kind of maze-like and confusing. Really, Link to the Past, there's only one dungeon that I really kind of struggled with. It's in the Dark World, and there's essentially 2 layers. Like, the dungeon has like a top floor and a second floor, but they're on at the same time. It's either dungeon 4 or 5.
I knew you were going to say that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got lost in that thing all the time. So I kind of struggled with that one. But once I got past that, the game wasn't too hard after that. I forgot to get the silver bow before fighting Ganon the first time. Which turns out that's a bad idea. So luckily I had a save point right before fighting Ganon. So I could go get the silver bow and then retry that fight. That's actually one of the easier Ganon fights.
Yeah. It's pretty epic, though.
Yeah. Like, in general, none of the boss fights are very difficult, but the dungeons, like, again, because there's not a lot of heart drops, and there's a lot of enemies, and there's a lot of enemies in the dungeons you can't damage, fireball type of enemies. So a lot of times you're getting to the last boss pretty worn down.
Yeah, I do want to say that this feels like one of the best Zelda maps out of the whole series. Mm-hmm. The map itself, the layout, and actually how you use the map. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that's mode 7, how they do that.
Yeah, it was the first Zelda game where the map tried to help you, right? Like, you could bring up the map and it would show you, like, okay, here's where the 7 dungeons are, So you weren't just hunting and pecking the whole time.
Yeah. When I got my Super Nintendo, I got the Link to the Past edition. So this was the first game I got with it. I think I bought F-Zero with that, and it was. I kind of consider this as kind of like Lucas did the special edition as the Star Wars. This is like Legend of Zelda special edition for me, where it kind of feels like what Miyamoto wanted the original to be. Not that there was anything wrong with the original, but this kind of stepped it up in some really great ways.
Yeah, it's sort of like, they made the first Legend of Zelda, and then they tried kind of a different direction. They incorporated sort of Dragon Warrior style overworld and side-scrolling battles, and people didn't like it as much, so they kind of swung way back to the original design. Mm-hmm. So all overhead view. Now the thing that they did is they started to make it a little bit easier. So again, like in the first Legend of Zelda, you spent a lot of time just kind of hunting and pecking, because you don't know where the dungeons are.
Yep.
So you have to try every bush, and sometimes you get like a tip from an old man that doesn't make any sense. Right. So occasionally you might get a tip of Nose of Dragon has a secret, and you're like, what are you even talking about? Right. You get that kind of stuff. So you have a hard time finding the dungeons, especially in Second Quest where they really hit the dungeons. Mm-hmm. And then you spend a lot of time bombing walls to try and figure out which walls might have a secret. Mm-hmm. And Link to the Past, they kind of put a little crack in the wall if you can bomb it, and they give you the map where it shows you the locations of all 7 dungeons.
So, A Link Between Worlds. If you've played A Link to the Past, do you think Link Between Worlds is kind of, I don't want to say boring, but kind of been there, done that? Or
No.
should you wait a while to play it? Or
No,
are they different enough?
It's really. The map is the map is basically the same, mm-hmm. But the main difference is Link Between Worlds doesn't have any structure to the story. If that makes sense, it's a little bit like Breath of the Wild in that from the beginning of the game you can pretty much do anything. So you're not locked down. So in Link to the Past, you're locked down by items. Mm-hmm. You have to get certain items to proceed in the game. And Link Between Worlds, you have access to every item in the game at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So you can get the torch right away, or you have to make choices though. Originally, you can't have all the items at once, but you can get any item at once. If that makes sense. Yeah. There's a trading system, so you can okay, well, I'm done using the candle. Now I'd like the shovel or whatever. And of course that expands over time, but You can basically start off with anything, and there's kind of no limits to where you can explore. It's like in the first Zelda game, you could explore the entire map, really from the beginning of the game. There may be one or two things that were blocked off you needed the raft for, and Link Between Worlds is pretty open from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, it's something I'll get to. It's just I have a pile of games to get to before that one, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get it.
So, any closing thoughts or?
No, I mean, this is like, there's a lot of different ways to get this game. Yeah, it held up pretty well. Like I said, it was a little more difficult than I remember, but I was a little more pressed for time now than the first time I played it.
Did it add any features in the Switch version? Do you know?
No, like just save states.
Okay.
Just you can save any time, and then has like, rewind play, so you can go back so many frames or something.
Okay.
It's kind of handy if you're like fighting a boss and you have like a quarter of a heart left and one more hit against the boss, then the rewind feature is kind of handy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've yet to use it, but I plan on starting to use that more.
You want to tease what we're going to talk about next episode?
Sure. Yeah, because I saw the new Star Wars an embarrassingly number of times already. I want to go to my favorite 2600 games, Empire Strikes Back.
All right. That is a fun game. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, now that it's the 2020s, I want to start including more stuff from the 2000s. The games I pick are primarily going to be multi-platform games from the 90s. That's probably still 75% of what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to go back to a multi-platform game from the zeros, and that is Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which is also retro in that it's set in 1986.
Yes. Yeah.
And I played a little bit of that over winter break as well. So that game turns 18 this year. So if you want to feel old.
I think you might get it for free from one of the stores. I forget what it is, but I think if you sign up, I don't know if it's Epic Store or what, you could get free. Yeah, it might be San Andreas and Vice City. I forget which one.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially free because it's like 99 cents on Steam all the time.
Yeah.
And a physical copy for PS2 is like a nickel. So that's the thing. It was a massively produced game, right? I mean, when you have that many physical copies in circulation. So yeah, you can play it on PlayStation 2, Steam, PC. When I say PC, I mean like without Steam. There's apparently an upscaled version on PlayStation 4 that I have not tried. Not HD remastered, just upscaled.
Yes.
It's a very, very important distinction. I don't know if it plays any better. It's $14.99 right now on the PlayStation 4 store. Seems like the kind of thing that might go, hold on, I have to submit my birthday to look at the page. Because there's no way someone under the age of 18 is going to game that system.
Yeah.
Who came up with this idea of the age verification form online?
Probably the same people that make you click, do you accept these cookies on every website?
Because they still use these. You still get the cookies, right? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Exactly, yeah. But now now you had one more click, so.
Yeah. It's also on iTunes, probably Android. I would not want to try and play it on my phone, though. It sounds completely miserable.
Yeah, unless you had like a clip controller or something.
Yeah, even then, I wouldn't want to play this on a small screen. All right, let's tackle some listener feedback. Let's see, Major's caught up on a few topics here So we talked about RPG series where you had to play the prior games. Yeah, sounds like something we would have talked about.
Yeah.
He called out Phantasy Star 4 as doing a good job explaining the backstory. And again, I've never played... I mean, I played Phantasy Star 4, but I played all the previous games beforehand. I'm not a good person to ask about that. 5 stars on iTunes. Seems like every podcast asks you to leave a rating, but if everybody leaves 5 stars, then doesn't that defeat the purpose? Yeah,
no,
probably.
but no one does. That's the thing. That's why we keep asking. And here's one difference between our podcast and the rest. We don't have Patreon. We don't have sponsors.
Right.
We just want to reach more people. So
Right.
5-star.
We're not
up,
sponsored,
please.
right? We are actually, like, again, we're not actually sponsored by Five Below or the Target clearance section.
Or Hackaday.
Yeah. We talked apparently about Sega releasing a lot more games, and obviously that's maybe the only good thing that came out of them getting out of the hardware business. He mentioned that he had a friend in high school who had OS2 because they were interested in the network and security aspects of it, which is that's a hardcore nerd friend for sure.
Yeah.
Skipping the PlayStation 3, he mentions he also skipped the PlayStation 3, but did get the 360 for the cave shooters and Platinum action games, but then later on bought a PlayStation 3 to use as a cheap Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
Traded 4 Sega CDs for a... That doesn't seem like a good trade, although Sega CDs do take up a lot of space. Does not own a single PlayStation 3 game, though. Strictly Blu-ray player. We talked about the Daytona soundtrack. He said there's a great YouTube video of the creator singing the theme song. So I guess if you Google... wish me luck. Takenobu Mitsuishi singing the theme song Let's Get Away. Have not seen that. My loot box of old stuff sounds like I should just leave it on the curb. Yeah, probably. I do have to make a trip to the electronics recycling dump, though, so very soon. I love, as you know, if you own a lot of tech stuff, you make a lot of trips to the electronics recycling dump.
Yeah.
So, let's see. As for Game Club games, Wipeout, he's a huge fan. Also calls out the futuristic theme in music as being high points. He said he and friends would play for hours, passing the controller around to beat different levels, and then once everything was unlocked, they'd play the first course with the max speed ship to sort of do like a speed run, which of course the term speed run may not have existed at the time. And Wipeout was the first time he'd ever heard of Red Bull.
That's interesting, yeah. Huh.
Now, I watched a lot of pro wrestling, so I'm sure I heard of Red Bull before Wipeout, because that seems like the kind of thing that would be on pro wrestling, wouldn't it?
I had friends that were
Like,
bartenders, so I just knew it as a mixer, I think.
Yeah, oh boy. Link to the Past. He had not played, but knows it's a very respected game. They left a little feedback on the crossover music Nerd Noise Radio episode we did there. Overall enjoyed it, except he was listening to it while he was on a road trip. He had been driving 7 hours with 3 hours to go. And when we got to some of the more ambient songs, that was bad times for him. Yeah, we do have we actually intentionally structured that show to put the music in an order that it kind of flowed well. And so, yeah, there's kind of the beginning through middle is the more ambient music. And yeah, that would not be, it's good to work to. It's not really good to drive to. Also, he mentioned he had not heard of Nerd Noise Radio before. So there you go. Hopefully they gained a new listener too. And then funny side note, when I was talking about the game L.A. Noire on that episode, it somehow activated his GPS.
Huh.
I don't know what I said that would activate the GPS. I mostly talked about L.A. Noire being a game that I liked the concept, but didn't really like the game. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Have you played L.A. Noire?
No, I've watched...
It's almost 18 now,
I've watched
too.
videos of it, though.
No, it's not almost 18. It's almost 8. Sorry. The math in my head all wrong there. Yeah, it's all right. I would actually say the Sherlock Holmes games on Sega CD are better.
Yeah.
They're kind of structurally the same game, but they're better.
They get mentioned a lot together, but maybe you activated his GPS again just now.
Maybe. I'm hoping so, yeah. That's what I'm trying to do. Do you want to get the other?
I'll do. So we got one from Jess. He didn't own a SNES as a kid, but when he went to his cousin's house, they would play and he wasn't that good at Super Mario World, even though he couldn't practice regularly. He just couldn't get the controls of the power cape down, or the cape power up. But now that he's an adult, he played through it, and it's nice to know that maybe it just was kind of overhyped. I had Yi Kung Fu as a game club game a few weeks ago, and he mentions that he never heard of it, that it made him nostalgic for a game he wants to recommend, Kakarita or Karateka or...
I believe it's karateka.
Karate. Yeah, I've mispronounced it my whole life. So that is a game that I had on the Apple back in the day that me and my cousin would play all the time. It's a game I'm saving for when we have a few more listeners. I adore this game, and I would love to get the author of it on for an interview. I've heard him on a few interviews lately. Side note on this, I think it was 2014 or 20, something around there. There's a remake by the same guy on PS4, possibly for PS3 also. And it's a bit more of a rhythm game. Not like... You kind of listen for cues to kick and punch. And it's the exact same concept. It's really cheap, and I highly recommend picking it up. But it will be a game.
Yeah, it was Jordan Menchner, right? He also developed Prince of Persia.
Yeah. So, I just want to say this will be a game club game. It's on my list, and I'm glad that other people are looking forward to it as well.
All right. So again, if you want to contribute, by the way, if we did not read your email, don't take it personally. We lost track of which ones we read on this episode or last one.
Yeah. So please, if we miss an email,
just send us a note saying, hey, jerkface, you missed my email.
Yeah. Just because it was so long, and I think I accidentally marked a few as read.
Right.
So if you want to contact us, please do email at retrogameclub.net. That is email at retrogameclub.net. Please follow us on Twitter, RGC Podcast. And, we have also Zach running the Facebook as well. We only read emails on the show, so if you tweet us or Facebook us, it won't be right on the show. So please email us.
I think...
I was just going to say... And please 5-star us. We need more listeners. We are getting quite a few more, surprisingly, even over our break. So welcome, all new listeners. I highly recommend going back a few episodes, kind of catching up on what we've been talking about.
And speaking of email things, I think at the end of the last episode we did, I mentioned if you want to do some unpaid artwork for us, we are looking for someone to help with... I think it's a small project, and we essentially need just a little bit of artwork for it. And if you're interested, email at retrogameclub.net. I don't know how we will compensate you, but we will come up with something.
Yeah. It won't be money.
At a minimum, right? At a minimum, I will buy you a drink at Midwest Gaming Classic.
Do they have alcohol
if you're
there?
Going? Well, so the new venue has bad alcohol. So the old venue that was way too small for the show, I mean, way, way, way too small, to the point where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go anymore because it's unpleasant. It's so crowded. Now, that place had a hotel bar that had New Glarus and other good beers, right? Mm-hmm. So the new location is, at the big conference center in downtown Milwaukee. The conference center, the convention center itself, just has, cheap canned beer, like the tall boy, like the kind of thing you would get at a sporting event. And kind of like the safety can, so you can't, cause a riot with it. I don't know what they're worried about with these. But basically, the sippy cup of beer cans is what you get, and it'll be some brand that you don't really want. So, and it's overpriced, but you're in downtown Milwaukee, right? Like, Milwaukee is not famous for a lot of things, but one of the things it's famous for is beer.
Yeah.
So you don't have to walk very far to get good drinks in Milwaukee. So if you're interested in drinking heavily at Midwest Gaming Classic. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea, but if that's something that interests you, like, I mean, there's a bar directly across the street. There's, microbreweries. I mean, it's Milwaukee, right? You're going to find beer. Wisconsin drinks the most beer per capita of any state in the country, right? That's a true statement. So you're going to find a drink there. But yeah, the actual conference center, it's like, that's right, because of the blizzard or something. We had a freak 2 years in a row now. We've had a freak blizzard at Midwest Gaming Classic. So I guess their way of avoiding the freak blizzard is actually holding it even earlier in the year. It's a greater, I don't know, greater chance of blizzard. But I guess they figured they're already cursed at this point.
Yeah, I bought tickets 2 years in a row, but I've never gone because I don't drive in the snow, and every time I needed to be back home the next day, and it's like, I might be stranded here, so I just need to hightail it out of here.
So it was 2 years ago was worse than this year, but this year was pretty bad too. It was really a lot of snow. But they have so the conference center there. I'm sorry to turn this into a Midwest Gaming Classic plug.
Yeah, everyone take a drink.
The conference center is attached. There's a hotel with a skyway attached to the conference center. So if you're staying there, you don't have to worry about the snow, right? You don't have to walk in the snow to go from the hotel to the conference center. It is a fully climate-controlled walkway. So just don't worry about that, is what I'm saying. And if you are going to go, pre-order your tickets, because the line to get in with pre-order tickets is minuscule compared to the line if you have to buy tickets.
I believe it, yeah.
It's a huge line. So
it helps them plan too.
It does, yeah, because they get the money up front, and then they can use that to invest in the show. We'll probably try and get them on for an interview too, to talk a little bit more about what they're going to do with the at the 2020 show. And by all means, go. Like, if you've never gone to a gaming convention, like, this is, to me, one of the best to go to. It's just everyone there is super chill. There's a lot of retro stuff. There's new stuff. Their panels have really been improving over the years. So, like, they've always had panels. They were typically kind of smaller, maybe slightly niche kind of things. But now, I mean, they have, like, famous, well-known developers. They have much bigger panels than they used to have. That's really, if that's your thing. Uh-huh. And they usually have one or two arcade games that you literally cannot play anywhere else.
And you could get your picture taken with weird dev systems.
Yes, yeah, you can get your picture taken with the PlayStation, Nintendo PlayStation thing, and tell some
puts it in a closet or on a shelf at their house.
Right, some cosmetic dentist in Florida buys it for $1 million, or there'll be people that you watch on YouTube or listen to podcasts of that will just be there attending the show, like, that you can just bump into and talk to.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of that, and they have really, like, a lot more homebrew stuff every year. So they have they had a whole room last time of just NES homebrew games.
Yeah, I'm gonna attempt it again this year. It's coming up soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there'll be another blizzard, but you should just tough it out. And
I should plan on being there an extra day, is what I should do.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the best thing to do is maybe plan, I don't know, depending on your situation, but, like, if you're like, well, I'm going to come out Friday night so then I can get to the show Saturday morning, and then if I get snowed in, I at least have an extra kind of buffer day to get home.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Might be a good way to do it. And on the drive home, you can go to all the cheese shops in Wisconsin.
But
you can stop at Mars Cheese Castle, all that kind of stuff.
And then get stuck in Chicago traffic for the majority of the drive home. For me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could add a few miles by doing, like, 294 or something.
Yeah.
You could bypass it. All right, we'll talk about Chicago traffic on a different episode.
So, yeah, welcome to 2020, Season 2. Yeah, we're excited. A lot of big stuff happening this year. So email at retrogameclub.net, and see you guys later.
Yeah, thanks for listening.